You've tuned in to the show that celebrates life and all that makes it special. Sports, music, you, and of course, a nice cold beer or a glass of your favorite wine. And now, today's story.
Gentlemen, welcome. Hey, Rick and Tom, it's always good to be with you guys. I'm not going to belabor this. Rick, I'm going to hand it over to you. College football, what say ye?
Well, we're doing a rundown of the top 25 this week. We're going to go ahead and me and Tom are going to give our predictions, just to touch on each team and see if we have any surprises and see if we can surprise any of the fans out there as far as the top four playoffs and who our champ is. So without even, taking too much time, let's just jump right in. Showing up at 25 this week on a fall from grace from number 9 is Clemson, who absolutely looked like they didn't even belong on the same field, which is so un-Dabo Swinney-like. It's ridiculous. I think, and I'm going to ask Tom this, I hope everybody saw this, he's got a complete disconnect with his quarterback. His quarterback's running off the field. Dabo's trying to give him high five and trying to pick him up, and the kid blows him off and runs right by it.
Let me just qualify. I saw that same clip, and my first review of that clip was, holy crap, that kid's ready. He's going to be a transfer at the end of the season. That was my first thought. But someone else made the point, and I think it needs to be addressed, is that he had just got blown up on a run play, and so his clock had been a little bit run, and he was going right to the bench. So it could have been that he was on tunnel vision. I'm going to give him credit just for the moment because, a 19, 20-year-old kid, I don't want to lop them all into this kid is a troublemaker.
No. I wouldn't have looked at it that way either way. That's either a frustrated quarterback, a hurt quarterback, or, play calling. There's a lot of things. And, the old Ditka Jim McMahon relationship wasn't great. I mean, they're going to get into it at times, but I was just very disappointed with Clemson more on the side of the offense. They couldn't get anything done really. That's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially, coming up when they have Florida State on that schedule still.
Well, you're exactly
right. Who
right.
Get beat by?
They are. Get beat by? It was
Clemson lost to Duke of all teams. Yeah, and this is not basketball. This was football.
Yeah, and
Duke is ranked 21. Duke is ranked pretty high though.
No, they're not. They
are now.
Yes.
They got rated because of the game. So I think they had 5 turnovers, or they had a significant amount of turnovers. Ball possession, ball control is so important in college football. If you lose the turnover battle, you typically lose the game. I would just add one more thing. Maybe, and you may be right, Rick, on this. Maybe the gleam is off of Dabo. Maybe he was 121-17, and since then he's 40-22. And the difference between those two things is Venables. With Venables as his defensive coordinator, he could not be beat. Without Venables, he's pedestrian.
Yep, very much so. I mean, that's probably to me, and we'll get to what the world thinks the biggest upset was, but for me, that's a 2-score favor. Clemson was favored by 14 in that game. To lose by 21, to me, that's the biggest upset of the week.
You contribute that to the players themselves? You think, like Tom said, the coaching maybe?
I think they lost a ton. He's correct. I mean, that's one of the better defense coordinators in the game that left him. But he had served his time at Clemson. He did what he was supposed to do. They just sometimes those guys are impossible to replace when you have geniuses at D coordinators.
And we're in a different era. With the NIL era coming out. I think we've experienced something that is cataclysmic, right? And so it's not just the personality of the coach or the motivation of the coach that's going to get things done on the playing field. But keep in mind, again, that game, the deciding factor of that game were the turnovers. Points off turnovers were the crucial mark. Listen, they turned the ball over inside the 20 twice. So left points, and they turned over the ball once at the 24 yard line.
It was inside the 10 2 twice. On the fumble.
Right. Inside the 10 twice. And so the reality is that game would have been very different without the turnovers, and we wouldn't have been talking about this game if they had eked it out. But the one thing we did learn is Duke, by the way, they have a coach. They have a new coach there, and he's doing a really good job. And we've got to give them credit that is not our grandfather's Duke football team. They're a good football team.
No. Yes. Agreed. Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Number 24, you're looking at Tulane. Not your everyday top 25 team. Had a great 20-point win against South Alabama, but we'll know a lot more about them when we do our next review, because this weekend they have Ole Miss. So it'll be 24-20 matchup. Great game on the cards. Let's see if they're real. I mean, there's no better test than right out of the gate against an SEC opponent. We'll see what Tulane is.
Yeah, and just to add, remember, they had a great coming out party last year. 2022 was an epic year for Tulane. They haven't had these type of years since the early 70s, late 60s, yeah, when they were competitive with LSU in Louisiana. But keep in mind, they've recruited well. They've got good athletes. They've got excellent skill position players and good quarterbacking. This is a team that has arrived. It's kind of like Houston has come around the last few years. Tulane has come around the last few years. The elevation of talent has been noticeable.
Yeah, they're the new Cincinnati, I would say, of that area. And just a little trivia for you there, Ralph, for all you beer drinking sports fans like me who wants to go, hey, name a team that doesn't have a nickname that ends in S. Tulane's one of them. That's the Green Wave.
What's their nickname?
The Green Wave.
Green Wave.
The Green Wave.
And
a point of disclosure,
Tulsa is
biased.
the Golden Hurricane. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased because
lose.
my sister went there in the 70s, and so I grew up a Tulane fan, even wearing those quirky colors. One more piece of trivia on mascot, on the nickname of football college programs. There is a Division I, or I'm sorry, there's a top tier division, not Division I, but a college football program that actually has a female nickname. Do you know which one that is?
Oh, no, I have a.
Well, there's actually two. There's the Golden Hens.
But...
There's the Golden Hens.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also Oregon State.
Oh, the Beavers. See,
but
sorry.
I wonder why you remember that, Rick. I just wonder why you remember that. But what was the one you said before that?
Golden Hens.
Golden Hens.
Honestly, truthfully, all right? Truthfully, do you want a national champion named the Golden Hens? Are you shitting me? Come on. Some of those names are ridiculous.
Better than the boll weevils. It's a lot better than the banana slugs out in California.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get me started on nicknames.
The golden, is it what was it, the Golden Wave, Tulane? Is that what it is?
No, the Green Wave.
That's the Green Wave. Tulsa is the Golden Hurricane.
The Green Wave. What the hell is that?
It's a big, mean-looking green wave.
No, that's bullshit. No,
that's what he looks like. I'm telling
the Crimson
you, man.
Tide. It's a
no,
tide.
That's another female name. We just didn't go.
Except the Crimson Tide's mascot is an elephant.
Correct, which makes no sense. Bunch of Republicans. No, the South were Democrats. Yeah, everybody knows that.
Okay, moving forward. Number 23, Rick.
23 on this new list is Texas A&M. A&M is always that wild card that everybody loves in the SEC and always thinks they're going to upset somebody, but they have a lot to prove. They've been so ho-hum lately, being top 10 every year, being that surprise SEC team. They have a lot to prove this year. They have a big game Saturday against your boys down in your area in Miami, so that we'll see. Miami came off of their win, so it's not like they're going to be a pushover.
Who did Miami beat?
Miami, let me take a look. I did not see, to be honest, because I know they're still not ranked. Let's see, who did they beat? Miami actually beat. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Miami of Ohio. It was the Battle of Miamis.
Battle of the Miamis.
Yes.
So it was. So they beat like a junior high team. Is that what you're talking
Correct.
about?
Yes, a MAC school.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
They're the Oxford of the Midwest. Is Miami of Ohio.
The bad boys of Miami are gone. They're gone forever, dude. It's done. Over.
It's
Finished.
not done. I agree with
It's
Tom. I think
done.
they're starting to recruit really well, but they had a lot of
Yeah.
work to do to change a culture down there.
Yeah. I've
So
been talking about that
that's
for the
what
last
happened.
20 years, dude.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Tom?
So A&M's got Miami, and now we come to everybody's sweetheart, and I have so many takes on this because, good Lord, I don't know where to go with this. Colorado and Neon Dion's boys. Was it a surprise to me they won? Sure. Are we making a little too much out of it with TCU losing everybody they lost? When my son looks at me and goes, how did TCU go from number 3 to 17? Well, because they have nobody there anymore. That's why. Was it a great win for Dion? I'll give him credit. I just wish he'd be a little more humble, but that's not who he is.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, but look at what we did discover. I mean, granted, TCU was not the TCU from last year. It was a shell of that team. So, two things happened. This game is kind of like what I call the NIL game. It's the modern incarnation of college football, which I'm not sure everyone loves, but it turned out to be a great game, back and forth, no defense, other than Sanders' other son,
right?
And that great cornerback. What's that cornerback wide receiver's name?
Oh, the kid that it's the kid that he. Yes, he was the top corner in the nation.
Yeah, Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter.
There you go. He was playing
Travis
both sides. Yeah,
had an amazing game. 11 receptions, an interception. That he's going harken to your Michigan Woodson two-way player-ish. But this is what was impressive about this. That program flipped its script. They replaced 66 of their players, brought in new recruits who were freshmen, the freshman class. They had a handful of players left over from the last regime. This was a full overhaul, and I gained a lot of respect for Dion because he was able to create discipline in a program that had very little discipline, and that discipline showed up on the field. That team played really well. His son at quarterback, Shedeur, played remarkably. 500 yards passing. What was so amazing about it was his accuracy and his command of the game. The game could have gone either way at the end, obviously. But Colorado did something that was everyone bet against. I mean, everyone bet against them having a successful year. They were predicted to have 4.5, 5 wins this year. That team is a surprise.
Yes, I agree. And I do give him props because I love hey, it's my way or the highway. There's the door. I will do it my way. It's now my club. I don't like people that come in and try to force their system on people that aren't their players. Now in today's transfer portal, you don't have to. It may be unfair to Colorado players that were recruited prior, but they can go somewhere else. So I was okay with that. And I agree. I mean, you're going to learn everything you need to know from Dion, especially as a corner. I mean, no wonder he got Travis Hunter. He wanted to play for the best that's ever played. That's why he went. So
I did hear something. Rick, did you hear this? This is amazing if it's true. Boomer Esiason was quoted yesterday as saying that Shedeur beat out, or he was FSU, Alabama, several other schools looked at trying to get him on an NIL deal, but Colorado got him, and according to Boomer, even if it's half this amount, it's incredible. He claimed $3.8 million.
Oh my!
He's going to be paid this year. That's ridiculous. Wow. That's amazing, right?
Is that under that NIL thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, come on, guys! Oh my God!
Ralph, I can do one better though. You have a backup quarterback that's not going to touch the field this year in Texas. That's making about that too.
Yes, that's true. That's right.
College football is over, folks.
The Kirk floodification of college football.
Yes, that's a great way to put it, Tom. Let me ask you both a real quick question on TCU. How the hell does a team that was vying for the national championship last year, were they not?
Yes.
Fall from there to number 22. Could it be, you guys are talking about, well, they fielded a team that was all freshmen. The first thing that comes to my mind is they didn't prepare for this. That was lousy recruiting the few years before that. Am I wrong? How does that happen?
I don't think you're terribly wrong, and I don't think they hit pay dirt in the transfer portal. And that's where it is now. Honestly, when you lose what they lost 3 or 4 on the offensive side of the ball, first and second rounders. I
But
mean,
Rick, why don't they have anybody in the pipeline? I don't get it.
They should, but this is what happens when you're not a national. TCU's good. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but they're not Alabama. They don't have the pipeline, like a minor league system, if you will, for baseball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
so
with their
now,
success last year, Rick.
The success last year that kind of came out of nowhere.
It was a fluke.
It was a fluke.
Well,
yeah, because
Dugan,
first off, wasn't even supposed to be playing. He wasn't even the starter.
So a lot of things happen. So in college football, the injuries are probably the most important thing that happen to any program. If you can avoid injuries, you'll have more success than otherwise, right? Secondly, is schedule. You don't know how the schedule. When the schedule makers make it years in advance, you don't know what your competition. Now, if you're going to play in Alabama, they're always going to be a good, right? But if you play Tulane, maybe the year you're playing them, they're not good, but 2 years later they are good. Or a Duke, for instance, like this year. You don't know how those scheduling gods work. TCU had that perfect year. They had the right players. They brought in the right talent. They elevated their talent at the right time. The coaches had coached up the talent at the right time to create this perfect storm. You had the configuration of all these things together. Think about this. Alabama had 2 losses on the last drive of the game. 2 losses, both on the last drive of the game. That kept them out of the college football playoffs, and it slid TCU in, and there we are. But they also get beat by a incredibly disgusting margin by Georgia, right? What was it? 66 to whatever? I mean,
like 7 or 10.
It was an embarrassment.
It was embarrassing.
And that also has an impact on the guys who want to stay at that program. And so that's kind of where all this played out.
Well, that makes sense.
And honestly, Ralph, it was kind of like the whole Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady story. Because if Dugan's number 1 doesn't get hurt in front of him, we don't talk about the miracle he was.
That's right.
He was an absolute miracle.
Yes.
I mean, the dude had open heart surgery a year prior. I mean,
beautiful,
that's
heartwarming
insane
story, right? It's a perfect college rags to riches story. I mean, TCU was fun to have to support last year.
Unfortunately, at the expense of my team, but yes, they were fun to watch. So, all right.
Don't get into your teams because I know you're a Detroit Tigers fan.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think they're one of the only, them in Oakland, and is probably the only 2 teams that are worse than the Yankees this year.
That's allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Okay. Number 21.
21. There's your Cinderella. We just talked about them too. You have 21 and 22 with the, backing up Colorado. Here's Duke, like Tom was talking about. And Duke used to have one of the legendary quarterback coaches of all time. So it wasn't really surprising they could put up numbers. What's surprising is they shut down Clemson. Defensively, I've never talked about Duke, not once in my life when it came to college football. So that was the surprising part. Now, what happens when you get all that success that quick? How do you back it up? That's what I want to see. They have a go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to add one piece to this. They have a new coach in Mike Elko. Mike Elko was prior, he was at Wake Forest for a while as a defensive coordinator. He goes to Notre Dame as a defensive coordinator. He gets plucked and goes to Texas A&M as a defensive coordinator. He made Jimbo Fisher look really good for several years.
Yeah.
And got him a second bigger contract. And now he comes over to Duke, and I will tell you, he's an exceptionally good coach, exceptionally good recruiter. Few people know X's and O's as well as Mike Elko does as a defensive coordinator. I will tell you, this is a program on the ascendancy. What we saw this week in beating Clemson may have been premature in terms of its ascendancy, but it's a prescription of what we're going to see in the future.
And I'll tell you what's good for them now, they don't have to back it up right away. They've got a couple weeks of some cakewalks with Lafayette and Northwestern and UConn, in fact. And then they have a date with Notre Dame. Now that's going to be fun to watch. I'll tell you that right now. Notre Dame's schedule just got a whole lot harder with this win by Duke.
And by the way, again, Mike Elko used to be the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So there's
at Notre Dame, yes.
Yeah, there's some lines of script here that will be fun to watch.
I think there's going to be a few stories this year play out that were like, oh yeah, I remember him. Wait, he did coach here. Yeah,
Yep.
It just happens. Number 20
Guys,
is. Go ahead.
Hold on a second. I'm on the outside looking in. If I'm a blue chip football player coming out of high school, I'm not going to go to Duke. Who the hell wants to go to Duke?
If you're smart,
if I'm a basketball player,
Duke.
well, no, I don't see. I want, because there's the name record. You want to vie for a championship because that's money in the bank. I look at it differently now. If you're a basketball player, hell, I want to go to Duke.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You want to go to Kansas. Yeah. But a blue chip football player, I mean, am I wrong? Is it why would
No, you're not wrong. I'm just saying I'm with Tom. Long term, you're thinking Duke because that piece of paper is going to ride you a lot of checks later down in life.
Yeah, you could be
but no, I get what you're saying. But if to me, if you're offered a D1 scholarship anywhere and it's got a great education behind it, and you're not a 5-star, you're all over Duke. I would be all over.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, pretty good. Okay, number 20. Rick, you going to do that? You going to do 20?
I'll do 20 and then pass it on to Tom. Is that what?
Well, that's 5 now. You've done 5. You've done 5. So
all right, then go ahead. Tom is at 20.
Yeah, 20 through 16. Tom.
Yep.
Oh no, one more. You do one more. You do Ole Miss.
Okay. Ole Miss is at 20. We just discussed them. Their first game, they had a really tough time against Ray Mercer. I was going old boxer on you. Ray Mercer, 73-7. That was a mercy rule and then some.
What the hell is Ray Mercer doing in these schedules, guy? Come on.
And they're not. It's the SEC.
This is the kind
you
of
got to understand the
off.
SEC schedules these.
I thought they were a high school team. Give me a break. This is what pisses me off about this crap.
I agree. Well, Mercer gets a nice little check for going into Ole Miss, and that's what they're happy about. Again, they have a quick test right behind it. That, to me, that's a terrible warm-up game, to me, because you're coming back into a top 20 game against Tulane, and you're not ready for that. You were playing third strings probably the entire second half. So, again, we'll see what both of them are made of come Saturday. That's a 3:30 game, Ole Miss and Tulane. I want to see that.
Okay, Ole Miss. All right.
Yeah, I mean, Lane is known for his offensive gimmick-free and creative game planning, and that was all on full display in the first half. When I say full display, he went basic. I'm not sure if you watched any of the game and the highlights. It was basic plays, but what he was doing it was like it's preseason football, right? You're going up against a team that's ill-equipped. To your point, Tulane will give them a much bigger show this week, and it'll be a fun game to watch because both
that'll be a firework game.
Yes,
right there.
Both teams have significant offenses.
Yep.
So number 19, I'm going to tell you what's interesting about Wisconsin this year is it's almost a throwback to the old Wisconsin teams. They're coming back, and this team is one to be watched. Buffalo, who they played this week, they beat them 38-17. Has been another team that had been on the ascendancy. Now they've plateaued over the last few years, so the program has not gotten as any big boosts the last couple of years. But it's still a solid football team. They do small things well. They do. They don't turn the ball over up much. They do a nice ball control type of offense, and that's what we watch. That's what Wisconsin does, and it does really well. Wisconsin kept it pretty vanilla, which is what they do anyway. This is a team that may surprise some folks this year. Strong, traditional Midwest, big offensive line, which Wisconsin's always known for. Grinded out, big running back with some speed, safe passes. The wide receiver, the receivers tree that they work is very limited. But it's old school. A lot of slants, a lot of curls, and that's what you saw this game. So if you want exciting football, you were not going to get that. But Wisconsin's going to be a team we'll talk about later because I think they have a favorable schedule that's going to help them. They're going to win the West. I think is easy, which means they've got 2 games. They've got 1 game during the season, and then they've got the playoff game to get into the playoffs. It's a pretty easy lift for them.
Let me tell you. Basically what they went out and got my buddy. I grew up with Luke Fickell. I played with Luke Fickell.
Excellent coach.
He is Barry Alvarez's long lost son. This is what they needed at Wisconsin.
Yep.
And he is a world-class wrestler before he broke his arm, turned to football. This guy is pure grit. Chris Spielman said he tried to wrestle him in the gym up here in Ohio State, and he was pinned in 6 seconds and said he'd never mess with a wrestler again. Luke Fickell is going to bring Wisconsin back to a top 10 program. It's going to be them in Iowa for the West.
Yep.
And then it's going to be probably them in Michigan in the Big Ten title game. I think it'll be great. To be honest with you, I love Luke, and I'm a big fan of Luke. So.
I'm a big fan of his coaching style. He's a great recruiter, and he knows the Midwest, whether at Cincinnati or Ohio State, where he was recruiting. He knows the people and the coaches he's recruiting. He's rebuilt that pipeline like that because he knows it. So to your point about the schedule, Buffalo, this week is actually going to be a tough game. Washington State is going to pose a unique speed confrontation for Wisconsin's slow plotter type of game. And Washington State is going to give them a game. This will be surprising. But then they got Georgia Southern, Purdue, Open Date, Rutgers, Iowa, Illinois. Iowa's going to be the tough game, but it's at home.
That's the game. That's
and then
the
you got
game to me.
Ohio State.
And I'll tell you, and I can't wait for that game. The Ohio State game. Remember, they passed on Luke.
That's right.
They passed on Luke. So when we were talking about storylines, this is going to be one of the best ever right here.
That's right.
Luke stayed loyal to that school under Tressel when Notre Dame wanted him to be the DC for them.
Exactly.
And he stayed home. So this will be good. This is a chip on the shoulder game for him.
You are absolutely right. And so circle the game October 28th. But here's the interesting part. They can lose that game, and it's not going to affect them because they may face –
because they'll have that cushion.
Because they're in the West, right? So this is going to be nice. I'm predicting they're going to make it to the title game in the Big Ten. I think they're a much better team than Iowa, who's very one-dimensional. But so that's Wisconsin. Oklahoma is we were just talking about Ole Miss. Oklahoma and Ole Miss are like two. They're like clones, like twins separated at birth.
Yeah.
All offense, no defense type of team, right?
Yes.
And Oklahoma, if they can learn how to play defense this year, which again. That's a big lift, right? It's a big lift that they can learn how to do. But if they can do it, they've got a really, really, really favorable schedule. You know, they eke one out against Arkansas State, 73-0.
It was a nail biter.
Down to the wire.
It's a nail biter until the flip of the coin.
Yes.
That's funny.
So then they got SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, which will be a test. Iowa State, which will be a test. Texas is at home, but I mean not at home. It's at Dallas. I'm sorry. It's at Dallas. It's the Red River rivalry, right?
Red River. Yep.
Then you got UCF, which will be a tough game. Kansas, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU, and TCU. My point being, they have one potential, or one could be. I mean, one should be lost. Texas should beat them, but it'll be a good game because both teams can score a lot of points. The reality is they can actually emerge undefeated. That's how scary Oklahoma. Now, granted, their win total expectation was only 9, but they could, looking at that schedule, if everything flips their way, they can run the circuit.
You know the problem with that, Tom, now that you're looking at that schedule, they can run the table, win the Big 12, and be left out of the playoffs. Because if you look at their schedule, they play one ranked team, and that's Texas.
That's it. Correct.
They need help by their conference. Well, they really do.
So there is help out there. And by the way, not the way people's schedules play out. There's a lot of round robins where when I say round robins is like Michigan can beat Ohio State, but Ohio State may lose to Penn State. And my point is, so a lot of these teams, by the time they get to the end of the season, may have 2 losses, not just one. The SEC has a little bit easier schedule. The reason I bring that up now is to your point. They can do everything right and still not get in, which is
exactly
right.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you guys something on Oklahoma. I remember Oklahoma being a big deal back when the Canes were the Canes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Barry Switzer. Yep.
That's the 80s. That was the heyday of those two.
Hasn't Oklahoma just taken a dive?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's all because of the conference. Look what USC had. Remember when Carroll was at USC, how great USC was. When Carroll left USC, they've done this, right?
Yep.
Good coaches come in, seemingly good coaches come in, good players come in, 5-star players come in. But this is where the management people underestimate, and Rick's exactly right. Luke Fickell is a great coach, and he's done it everywhere. So it doesn't matter where he is, he's going to be successful, and his team will be successful because he'll be disciplined, smart, and tough. Lincoln Riley is 40 years old. He's at USC right now. He was at Oklahoma, and he was putting up these ridiculous numbers on offense, but they couldn't. They had a sieve defense. Oklahoma has had this problem since those days you're referring to, where they've not had a good defense in a decade, and it's partially because of the division, the league they're in. That old Southwest Conference. Well, I still like the old conferences, right? The Big 12 is a all offense, very few defense conference, and the few teams that play defense are the ones that gain upsets. Kansas State will always play good defense, and they'll sometimes upset teams. Iowa State always plays good defense. They'll sometimes upset a game where they're not expected to win. Texas should always play good defense, but hasn't played it in years.
Yep.
And so this is the reality of that conference. It's all taken the persona, which is amazing because all it takes is one coach. And the new coach at Oklahoma is a believer in strong, speedy, athletic defenders. So if they can start putting pressure on quarterbacks, which is I think they're going to be able to do this year, they may surprise some people.
Reminds me of the WAC.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
old WAC when BYU was in it.
Yes.
I just don't understand. I don't understand why they don't put more emphasis on defense. Defense, that's what wins games. You don't have a defense. I remember the old Don Coryell San Diego Chargers.
Air raid,
They would score 45 points every game, and they would lose.
Yep.
Well, what are they thinking when some of these people that put these coaches, they hire these, what the hell are they thinking? Remember, I don't have the expertise you guys have on this. To me, it's just like, hey, we've sucked at defense for 20 years. Let me get a good defensive coach. Could you guys shed some light?
It's like
on
the NBA small ball, Ralph,
Exactly.
that drives us nuts, right? That
There you go.
a team will put up 140 and still lose a championship because what have we said for the last, century? That defenses win championships, correct?
Well, who was like the San Antonio Spurs were like that, weren't they?
Having said that, in the modern incarnation of college football is kind of like the modern incarnation of Major League Baseball. And that is, while defenses do win championships, what we've noticed in college football is offenses have been winning the championships of late. In fact, the top five teams in offense are the ones that keep making it.
You know why?
That's where
the defense
TCU
sucks.
came in. Well, it's because
the defense sucks.
Well, no, but there's a reason the defense sucks is because the rules favor the offense, right? And so keep in mind, offensive players, there's not an offensive player in college football last year that was ejected from the game for targeting. But if you have a All-American safety or a great linebacker or a cornerback who knows how to tackle, there's a 20% chance during the season he's going to get ejected for 4 quarters, maybe the second half of this game and the first half of next game, because he targeted. That limits the ability of the defenses to dominate like they did in the past. People don't understand how important that is to keep your best 11 on the field.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. They've changed the game kind of rules-wise, just like they changed hockey. They want to see scoring, and they can lie about it all they want. They want to see scoring.
Yep.
They know the 20-something generation gets bored with defense. So they need to – it's all about the money and keeping the hook. It really is.
The TikTokification of football.
There you go. That's a great analogy. Yes.
Great way to put it, buddy. All right. Tom, number 17.
Yeah, number 17 is North Carolina. Here's so I've always had a thesis in college football, and that is it's a quarterback-driven sport. And if you have a great quarterback, you can make a good team great, or you can make a mediocre team good. And North Carolina has recruited great under the old man, and I call him the old man because this is his third go around in this league, right? And so he's done such a good job of bringing in talent in North Carolina. Surprisingly, I don't know how he did it before NIL, but he did it. He brought in good players, and Drake May is an excellent quarterback. He's on the Heisman watch, and that's why this team is very good. This past week, they didn't put up the numbers you thought they'd do on offense, but they still got by in the South Carolina, North Carolina, the Carolina Bowl is what they call it. So 31-17. South Carolina is a good football team. They always have a good defense. Whether their offense gels or not is always whether the kind of the bellwether if they have a good season, plus 500 or not. They have a good defense, but May threw for I think it was 2 touchdowns, 270 plus yards. He played well enough to win, keeps him in the Heisman hunt. But for them to succeed this year, he has to outpace some of the greatest college quarterbacks of the last 10 years. They're all here this year. It's amazing.
Right. If I would have told you 2 years ago that you would have had a battle between May and Radler, we would have been calling that one of the best matchups ever.
Exactly.
Seriously,
right.
in a college game.
That's
and
right.
you look at the attitude that Radler's shown, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put him down, but he needs to screw his head on because that dude had everything in front of him.
So much talent, so much skill. Yep.
And an NFL squad now, I'm telling you right now, if they see his attitude in an interview, if they just watch film, that guy's going to go from everything to nothing. He needs to turn it around this year. This is his last shot.
What's that? Who's the quarterback from Texas A&M who just had the big video, self-promoting video?
Johnny Manziel.
Yes, Johnny Manziel. Yeah.
He's the modern Manziel. And
yes, you're absolutely right.
It's unfortunately we've added this is an example of that reality of today, and that is with the NIL deals, we're now giving 18 to 21-year-olds all the money they can blow on the worst decision-making time of our lives. Every one of us, the worst decisions we ever made were in college, right? And so instead of putting more parameters and guardrails on these kids, we've blown them off, and we said, you know what, kids, here's all the money you need. This is a scary time because the kids are going to be making some scary bad decisions, and I fear some of them will be made during season. After a big win, a kid goes out, pokes it up, and whatever, gets in a car accident. We're going to see some things in the next year and a half in college football that we've never seen before, and it's not.
Let me ask you something, Tom. Not even just in a year and a half. What about 5 years down the road when they forgot to pay taxes on all this NIL money?
Exactly,
because nobody talks about that. But I promise you, the first thing they should be getting these kids is a financial advisor when they take these deals.
You're 100% right, and that the NCAA should be the rules that they have, which doesn't really exist. There is no rule.
Right.
It's the Wild West, but they should. Every school, if they care about their kids, they should bring in those financial advisors, set these kids up, put the money into annuities, whatever. Protect these kids for the rest of their lives because so few of them will ever make it at the next level. So they should be taking advantage of the money they have now.
If you want to create an entourage, create it with a financial advisor first. And I'm going to just give a quick shout out to a friend of mine because that's what he does for University of Kansas for the basketball team specifically. He brings the freshmen in, he sits them down and teaches them financial planning. Period.
That's huge. That is huge.
So quick shout out to Pat Brown. There you go, bud. But he does a great thing for them. I thought it was
Tom,
really cool.
You hit it right on the head when you said and that's the key word there, if the NCAA cared about these kids. Tom, they don't.
They don't.
They don't give a shit about these kids, just like the owners of all these major league teams and all these. Bud. They don't give a shit about their players. They don't care. See, we're going to get into a whole new thing. No, people in power don't care. Politicians don't care about the people. Yeah. It's all money. I'll just throw this at you. I don't want to get off the. I asked this one question to everybody I know. Name me one decision, just one, however small, that you make on a daily basis that is not in one way or another connected to money or influenced by money. Mm-hmm. I have yet to have anybody give me an answer that's not connected to money. It's all about the money, dude. They don't give a crap about those kids.
Totally.
They don't give a shit. Okay. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw
that.
I rant.
Oregon State. Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that it's about the only thing I agreed with Kaepernick in his whole spiel when he got all mad when he said we're cattle and they bring us in draft day like cattle. And he's right. He's right. It's all you can do for my business.
That's right. But you know what? He still pocketed millions of dollars.
Oh, I know. I'm not saying I agree with anything he said. That part I agree with.
He's an asshole. Okay.
Oh, that's a whole nother day on that one.
And this is the whole thing. We can do a whole show on the NIL and the automatic transfer at a future show on college football. I think it's important to talk about and whether this whole reality will be in existence 10 years from now, because I'm not convinced it will be. But having said that, Oregon State, they'll be taking on UC Davis, that powerhouse, this week. But
who makes these schedules up, Tom? Who the hell puts these schedules?
The athletic directors.
That's what sucks.
Yeah,
that's
the athletic directors.
They're years in advance.
And they coordinate with, if you're in a conference, they coordinate with the conference coordinators, which are they put it in the computer, generate it out based on the conference requirements. But Oregon State had a good game. They played really well and put up 42 against San Jose State, who is a decent football program. And I'll say it this way, that Oregon State is a surprise. They are a team that's slowly built a good, balanced, good defense, good offense in the Pac-12, Pac-40. Now you might want to, or Pac-6 because everyone's leaving. So it's a six-pack. They're going to change the nickname or the name of the conference.
Hey, that'll be great. You could put Kenny Rogers on the face of it and do some old 80s.
But Oregon State is the legacy of the 2023 Oregon State program will be this. Will they upset USC? Will they upset Oregon? Will they upset Washington? The three main programs of the conference. Will they change the trajectory of those teams in the postseason? Because that's going to be their legacy this year. They have a good football team that can upset some teams. The best they can hope for, I think, is a 15-25 finish. And if they can beat one of those teams, that'll be secured. If they lose those teams, then they may trickle out of that top 25 by the end of the year.
All right. Okay, so
number 15 is K-State, which is the one team in the what I still call the Southwest Conference, the Big 12, that I think will surprise some folks because they play an aggressive defense. They have good ends. They've been putting guys in the NFL for a long time that no one knows until on draft day. Like, well, he's a defensive end who had 9.5 sacks. It's just a team that does it every year. And it's a legacy because you remember the old coach they used to have. I think he was there for 27 years, or 28 years, whatever it was.
Yes.
What was his name? It's not even.
Oh, I can't remember his name. I agree.
You know who I mean, but
yes, white hair, glasses. Yes, he's fantastic.
Yep.
Fantastic. Yes.
But that program is just steady. It's just a steady program. But that's the 19 through 15.
Yep. So I guess I'll go to my second biggest disappointment of the week, which would be LSU, because coming in, it's all SEC talk and all this, all that, and Kelly. And personally, he just got outcoached and outplayed. He went for it twice early in that game on fourth down when he should have taken the points on one of the two possessions. Didn't matter which. Get some points on the board. He could have went up, I believe, 10-7 at that point, or 10-0 at one point. And he's too stubborn. He's one of those coaches. He reminds me of Urban
Rick,
quite a bit.
You just nailed it. And this is important. And I wish young coaches would understand this. And this is why I can't stand the person Jim Harbaugh, but I love the mindset Jim Harbaugh. And this is what it is. Old coaches used to say, you never miss an opportunity to take points, right? Because you never know how a football game is all about momentum. When a defense has the opportunity to stop you on fourth down, and they've gotten into your territory, right? So obviously the momentum's on the offensive side. Maybe they started from the 40, maybe they started from the 16, but they've gotten into your territory, and now they're in striking distance. They're inside the 35, so they have a potential for typically inside the 35, but they have a chance to put points on the board, and they don't take that chance. And Rick, you'll like this. It's the greed of the modern coach. They get greedy. They're not happy with 3. They want
Right.
to take it all. They want to get 7. Here's the problem. It changes the momentum of a game. And when you do it twice, think about this. That game became a blowout. It would have never
Yep.
been a blowout if he had
Nope.
gotten 6 points at that point, because those 6 points that he would have potentially gotten would have changed the psyche of the players on the field. And
Thank
that
you.
changes everything.
Let me ask you another question. If you're a defensive player for your team, what are you thinking? I'm sitting there going, man, coach he thinks it's going to be a shootout. We're not stopping
Exactly.
anybody.
That's right.
We're not stopping anybody. So he's trying to get every time we get. First off, Florida State stopped them on 8 straight plays inside the 5 on that first series
Yes.
because there was a penalty to give them the automatic
right.
first down on the unsportsmanlike. So that's 8 straight plays. They stopped them inside the 5, and you're still stubborn as hell, and you still do it again on the next drive.
So to your point about the coach, and listen, I'm going to admit up front, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I've been a Notre Dame fan since 1972. I never liked Brian Kelly as our coach because of things like this. When we had opportunities to beat teams, he changed the momentum of the game by making bad coaching decisions. And that's because he thinks he's an offensive genius. So, and this is the danger of that genius tag, right? He wins up at Grand Valley State, he won a national championship twice. Actually, won a national championship on D2. What my point being, don't read your press clippings, and don't be ingenuine or disingenuous to your team. And when I say that is, know your team, know what your team's capable of. And if you've got an SEC defense type of team, which LSU does,
Right.
you lean on your defense. And then you pick your options, pick your moments with your offense.
Yep, I agree. He's got God complex, is what I call it.
Yes,
he really
he does.
You're not the only Notre Dame fan that's told me that, and I've seen it firsthand.
Now,
but going up
look at their
to
schedule.
13,
Look at their schedule, Rick.
Oh yeah, you know what? And after what I saw, I hope they get shelled this year. Honestly, maybe it'll wake them up.
Well, to your point though, think about as a coach, you better know your schedule and you better know your team. If he had limped out of that game with a win, the schedule is really favorable.
Oh yeah, the schedule sits. Yeah, it does all the way up through.
Yep.
I mean, even Arkansas, you got Ole Miss
open date before Alabama. Test. Open date before, which means you got 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama. And so my point being,
the SEC is down.
Yes, it is down.
I mean, it is.
Yes.
It's down.
And the reality is, he had the opportunity, if he managed that game right, to put himself in position to have 2 weeks to play Alabama, and then go and if he beats that game, he's in the title game. He's in the title game against Georgia or Tennessee or Georgia or Tennessee, because he would have eliminated Alabama.
Probably, yeah.
And this is Alabama has a weak year because they don't know who their quarterback is.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Oregon's at 13. Oregon had another really tough game against that they're not the Pilots. That's Portland is the Pilots, but Portland State, I'm not sure what their name is.
Do you guys remember the great ball player from Portland State?
Basketball or baseball?
No, football.
Football. Nope, I do not.
Rick, do you remember the great football player from Oklahoma? Quarterback.
The great football player from Oklahoma?
Neil Lomax.
Okay. He was from Portland State?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a good one. I like that. Very nice.
They haven't been good since then.
Oregon had a nail biter against that Portland State team, 81-7. 81-7.
81.
Wow, down to the wire, huh?
Yeah, it really was. And Oregon, speaking of favorable schedules, to me, Colorado they have in 3 weeks, but then Washington, and that's for the conference title pretty much. They still have Utah. They actually do have a decent schedule left on this.
Yeah,
Oregon always.
To your point, their first half of their schedule is until their open date on October 7th is stay healthy, right? Because then you got you're at Washington State home, at Utah. Those are 2 tough road games, right?
Very.
And then you got Cal, which is which is always a fun game. Remember the Oregon Cal game?
Yeah.
That's a famous
Always fun
game.
Yeah.
But then you got USC at home, and then last game is Oregon State, the rivalry.
Oregon State, the
to your
rivalry.
point,
Yep.
it's a tough schedule.
Civil War. It really is. I just
Bo
saw
Nix,
that. I'm like, wait a
I
minute.
don't
They got
think
like 6 ranked. Yeah.
Yeah. Bo Nix, I don't think has enough right here to win those games. Enough of those games.
And he should. He's been around forever. He should.
But he's got a feature, and tell me if you agree or not. I look at players and I look at, do they rise or shrink to the moment? He always seems to shrink to the moment.
No, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. He reminds me of, and Cincinnati fans will probably be mad at me, but Andy Dalton used to be
Exactly.
so bad in the primetime games. And there were odds on it. I mean, you could literally do the stats on it.
Yep.
If it was a nationally televised game, you bet your house against him, period. So that's kind of what he reminds me of. So Oregon sitting at 13, right above them. Utah, love this team, always have. They belong in the Big Ten. That's really their style to me. I love the Utes. My BYU family will yell at me for even saying that, but I do love the Utes. They just
the Utes.
The Utes.
Utes.
That reminds me. What was that? What was that movie?
That was my cousin Vinny. The
Right.
two Utes.
The Utes?
The two Utes.
What are Utes? I can't believe they would. They actually that team's
It's
name is
after
the
a
Utes.
tribe. Yeah, it's after a tribe.
UTES.
UTES.
The
the Utes.
Indian tribe.
Yeah, right.
It's one of those great stadiums that's built in the side of the mountain, and they got it's a beautiful.
It's beautiful. Same with Provo. If you ever get to go to either one of those stadiums, go.
Fantastic. Yep.
They'll never win a national championship with that name.
It always cracks me up because it's just a pick and choose on who they're going to get rid of their native nicknames,
Exactly.
Because for me, where I was born, Eastern Michigan was the Hurons.
Always.
We had the Huron tribe chief testify for that school to keep its name. No, they made us change it to the Eagles because you had a bunch of crying liberals who had nothing to do with it.
I got you.
You see what I'm
don't get me
saying?
started on- yeah, don't
So
get me
like
started
Central
on-
Michigan's still the Chippewas, Florida State's still the Seminoles, but you have St. John's who's no longer the who were they? Redmond, St. John Redmond.
Sorry.
They're the
That
Red
was
Storm
water.
now, right?
Okay,
So, yeah.
It goes back to names like people get insulted. I know, Tom, if you heard that they got insulted. What was the name that the liberals got insulted for?
Snowflakes?
No, the one you just named.
Eastern Michigan Hurons. It was a Huron
Hurons.
tribe. Yeah, Hurons.
That's just like they got all at the beginning of this whole thing. They got pissed off. Aunt Jemima, the picture. Of
Well, Cleveland Indians had to change their
there
name.
you go,
Guardians.
Cleveland Indians.
Here's the funny part. This is always promoted by the progressive fascist idiot. And this is
Exactly.
and here's the funny, they're obviously not sports fans because you don't
Not at
name
all.
a sports team something that you don't celebrate. You celebrate your sports team. So you love your your Indians. You love your Redskins.
Right.
You love your Utes.
Right.
You love your Seminoles.
Right.
You don't hate
Right.
the team you name it after. It's
Just
so
like the
funny.
I never thought
Redskins,
about it that
Washington Redskins. They did no research on it. It was in honor of their first Indian player.
Exactly.
And yet, nope. Got to get rid of it.
People are people
They
just
lost
need a reason to bitch.
Yeah,
All right,
they
let's
really
get back
did.
on the high. Let's
All
get back
right,
on the
let's
highway
go.
because we could.
Yep.
Number
All right.
11.
I know. Number 11, Texas. This is my wild card for this year. This could be a playoff team or they could fold tent. You never know because you never know. I think they go as he goes. And honestly, he has got the most pressure this year of any quarterback in the nation without even blinking. He has one bad game. You're going to have everybody yelling for Archie Manning, period. And they're going to beg them to throw him in. And it's going to be a terrible move, but I'm just telling you, you want heat, that's heat. So that kid transferred from Ohio State after raking money here from the NIL, and then he went to Texas, and now he either puts up or shuts up because honestly, they've got somebody sitting behind him that the crowd's going to want in.
And to
And
your
trust
point,
me, I saw this firsthand last year with McNamara and JJ McCarthy. So
Yeah.
I saw this firsthand.
It happens. But here's
Yep.
to your point, and I agree with you. This is a team. it's what I call the bottle rocket. They're gonna shoot it fast, and if it explodes, we'll know it this week on September 9th. It's the game, Texas and Alabama. And what's amazing about this game, first of all, it's at Alabama, so that's the tough part. But here's the good news: Alabama still does not know its offensive identity. I mean, they like Milroe, but they don't know if he's their quarterback for the year. They've got a four-headed monster. They got Simpson, and they got the transfer from Notre Dame, Buckner, and they have him who's leading. And then they have, in their mind's eye, they have next year's recruit who's the number one quarterback in the country. And so they have this mindset. Is this quarterback going to be our quarterback for 2 years? That's what they're hoping. But here's the problem. Texas is loaded. They've got great skill position players. I mean, they lost two great running backs, right? They lost two huge, great running backs, but they reloaded with speed and size. They've got three receivers. They brought another one in through the transfer portal. They've got speed and size at wide receiver. They've got Ewers, who's an incredibly accurate passer. He is just a very talented young man.
Yes.
To your point, though, it's right here with him too. Yep. Does he have the confidence to be a giant killer this week? Because if he is, and you said it, this is a sleeper team because they've got at Alabama and they've got Oklahoma and Dallas, and that's it. I mean, they got K-State later in the season.
K-State comes to them, though. You're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
but K-State comes. This schedule is so favorable.
Their schedule, I think they're a sleeper playoff team.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. So, and I'll be rooting for them. I'm just an anti-SEC, anti-Alabama, everything. I can't. I can't. So we'll get to 10, and here's your boys, Notre Dame. Obviously, the big story with them, the transfer quarterback who's looking really, really solid right now. Of course, they played a juggernaut too. I'm not going to let them get away with this. You know, those Tennessee State, whoever the hell they are, they won a close one, 56-3 on a last-second 55-point touchdown. So, good game.
Even change how many points a touchdown is worth. All right,
to your point, here is. I'm going to make this statement because as a Notre Dame fan, I've never wanted to see this day. I've never wanted to see the day that we're not playing a D1 opponent, which we've never done before.
Right.
This is the first time it's ever happened, but it was a historical black college. It had a historical significance to it, and I think that's something they wanted to do for the wokeness of the program.
That's cool.
But having said that, listen, the one thing they've learned on the scheduling front with Salbrick as their coordinators, they typically overschedule and underperform, right? And that was, again, they had Kelly at the coach, so that was going to be a prescript that was going to happen. But this year, their schedule, it looks pretty favorable. They got three big games. They've got USC, Clemson, and in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's October 13th, it's Ohio State. So USC, that's Ohio State, and Clemson. Duke. But this week I'm sorry, not this week, but coming up soon is Duke. And to your point, what makes that game interesting, the Elko reference.
Yep.
But ultimately, they don't have, because they're independent, they don't have a championship game that they've got to play. So they really have to have an extra win and one fewer loss than the competition to get in the football playoff, which I don't think they can do this year. So it's going to be a pretty big lift this year for them.
Just do me a favor and beat Ohio State. I don't root for you guys a lot. I will root for you on that game.
But again, to your point, Ohio State's still trying to figure out its quarterback situation. Is McCoy the guy?
We'll get to that.
So no, continue. So I guess I'll jump.
No, you're good. Yeah,
I'll jump on with
you
Tennessee.
Go ahead. Yep.
Because here's another team that, if it weren't for their schedule, I would tell you Tennessee is a potential top 5 team in the nation, and knocking on that door. Their offense puts so much pressure on a defense, and the talent and skill players they have, the big offensive line. They've got some big uglies up there. They run the ball effectively, but they move the ball so quickly, and it'll be tough for teams to outscore them. And that's what they're going to have to do. So their schedule, just to review that. By the way, I'm just going to tap on this since we're in this top 10. I'm just going to name this. Caleb Williams, odds-on favorite to win the Heisman for the second time, like your Columbus Archie Griffin boy.
Archie,
You got Jordan Travis from Florida State. You got Michael Penix from Washington Jr.
Yep.
You got J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. You got Bo Nix from Oregon. You got Sam Hartman at Notre Dame here. You got Quinn Ewers at Texas. You got Drew Aller from Penn State. You got Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Drake May from North Carolina. And Travis Hunter from Colorado.
No mention of Milton on that list, huh?
And so that's what I was going to get to. I left him off for a specific reason, but potentially by the end of the season, the quarterback that may have the best statistics could be Joe Milton, because that offense is so dynamic. So he becomes that potential. Again,
he's a good dark horse.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. He's a solid quarterback with an offensive genius pushing it.
He's got the best arm in the nation, bar none. Remember, we had him. I watched him as a freshman. He transferred from Michigan. The problem with him is, and the problem with a lot of these athletic quarterbacks is, where's your cerebral part of the game? Can you make your secondary, third reads? Can you get to them quick enough?
Yes.
Instead of trying to force to your ones or your second read. And that's where he gets in trouble, because arm strength is such a good thing to have, but sometimes you think you can fit it in anywhere. And that's what scares me about him. The other part about him, that why Michigan let him go, is his long ball touch was horrendous. We'll see if he's gotten that fixed. He loved to throw ropes from 55 and 60 and would outthrow guys by 10, 15 yards who were wide open. And that's a problem. And that's what I want to see from him. I root for him. I root for any Michigan kid that left. I don't care. They're still part of a program to me. I really don't care. So I want to see him do well, especially down in the SEC. But as far as talent in his arm, ridiculous arm strength. Ridiculous.
Absolutely. Tremendous talent. So, again, as we're getting into these numbers, these teams obviously keep getting better and better in terms of their overall team talent. Washington has the unfortunate reality of being part of the Pac-6, right? The future Pac-6, but the Pac-10, 12, 15. They change the name every year. Again, Penix, great quarterback. This offense, again, is dynamic. The one thing we're noticing is we're not talking as much about these great defenses, because every one of these teams has a quarterback that leads them that is ridiculously talented. And I said earlier that this may be one of the best quarterback classes of all time. All these teams have a great quarterback at the helm, and it's an unusual reality that you have this much talent. But again, their schedule, they've got Oregon after an open date. They have USC on the road, Utah home. That is an incredibly favorable.
That's brutal.
Now, they do have Michigan State, who always can upset anybody on a given day, even with the new team. But Washington's a team to watch out, because they may be able to slip into this title hunt too.
Agreed.
So interesting.
Anything else on Washington?
No, nothing on Washington. I love Penix. I got to follow him for years here in Big Ten country. When he was with Indiana, he just gets injury prone. That's the only thing you have to watch out for him.
His size, it's a size issue, right? He's playing a big boy game, and he's just not a big boy.
Yeah, and and literally he ripped his AC or tore his Achilles just running out of bounds. So that scares me with their non-contact.
Yep, absolutely. So Penn State.
This is the wild card to me in the Big
Total
Ten.
wild card. This team, Drew Aller is probably the best quarterback we haven't talked about yet, right? I mean, when I say we've mentioned other quarterbacks. Drew has an amazing arm, 6'5", 230-pound kid, young, and has feet underneath him. He's not just a block of granite. He's not a Roethlisberger. The guy has some feet too. But they've got the best running back in the country, according to, in my estimation. Nicholas Singleton is amazing running back. In the Big Ten last year, he averaged 6.5 yards per carry. That's in the Big Ten. Think about that. In a conference that's used to running defensive running backs,
Yep.
They couldn't stop him. The kid was that good. They don't have the same group of receivers they've had in the past. There's a younger group, but it's tall, it's big, it's talented, and it's fast. And their defense is typical Penn State. A Franklin type defense knows they've got a tough defensive line. But here's what makes Penn State SEC type of competition is their offensive line. They've got two of the best tackles in the country, and they've got a great center and a great guard. This offensive line may be what makes Penn State a Big Ten champ and puts them into the national championship four because they have every element covered on a football team.
Yep. Yeah, their running back tandem is ridiculous, as you said. We got to see what Lars all about, but he comes in with nothing but accolades. We know what he's supposed to be. The problem I have with Penn State is I just don't like Franklin. I think he's a terrible game manager.
Absolutely.
And this is coming from one of my best friends who is a diehard Penn State fan. This is the year to me for him. If he doesn't do it this time or this year, or at least top 2 in the Big Ten, if he loses to us, or I think they're better than Ohio State. Personally, I think they're better than Ohio State. And I can tell you why, because Ohio State doesn't even know who their quarterback is right now.
Right.
They're
exactly.
lost. And their offensive line is terrible. And
Yes.
I'm sure I'll get hated on for these comments.
And their
except in
schedule
Columbus,
sucks.
That's all they're talking about is how bad they're. And I said it before the year started. When you have freshmen competing for a starting job on an offensive line, you're in trouble.
Florida State did that for years. You're exactly right. You're right.
I don't care how good they are. They haven't had a year of building or putting on that muscle or putting on that weight. They're not ready. So when you're telling me out of camp that this freshman's coming in and competing, I'm like, they're in trouble. And they are. But
Rick,
they'll
you're
figure
right.
out a way. I think Day's a good coach, but we'll see. Penn State's just the team to me that is the sleeper that scares me.
You as a Big Ten fan understand this better than most, and you're exactly right about Franklin. Franklin is a horrible game coach, and he is. I mean, when they've chosen the whiteout, they lose, and so hopefully, as Penn State fans, I hope they say, listen, no whiteouts this year. Because they seem to lose every whiteout these days, but it's because of Franklin. He's a horrible game day coach. He's a great recruiter. From his Vanderbilt days to today, he's a great recruiter. But you nailed it about the offensive line. You nailed it about, listen, what the differentiation between high school football and college football is enormous. And it's all held within one person. It's not the offensive coordinator. It's not the defensive coordinator. It's the strength and conditioning coach.
You got it.
That's what makes a college football player on the defensive line or offensive line ready for prime time. It's not because they were a 5-star. It's because they're big and strong and they're ugly.
Yep. Totally agree. That's truth.
So number
number
six, USC. Listen, you have one of the greatest young minds, and I'm going to say this, one of the greatest minds in college football history. In his first 6 years of coaching, he's only 40. He's done more things in terms of offensive ingenuity than we've seen in our lifetime. It's almost Eric Coryell-ish on how creative he is in the offensive coordination. But again, they lacked defense last year. And that was their demise.
They lack defense this year.
They lack defense this year. Exactly. They gave up points to a team they should have shut out. And the reality
to San Jose State. Yeah. Who's a decent program.
Yeah. Yes, decent program. But when you're
not
USC,
28 points good. No.
Yes. Think about this. USC, you are in Southern California. You're one of the richest colleges in the world. You have one of the richest fan bases in the world. You have the best sunshine in the world, right? You have all these amazing advantages.
Wait a minute.
To bring
Here
people,
goes the Miami guy. Look out!
It's listen. It never rains in Southern California, right?
That's right. That's what Babyface said.
So the bottom line is, this program is primed to succeed. The only thing that's kept it back is bad defenses over the years, and they still have it this year. But what makes it even worse, and this is, I'm going to tell you, let the cat out of the bag. Their conference schedule is setting them up in a very difficult reality. I'm just going to read this. You may have it in front of you. If you do, this is what I'm basically focusing on. I don't see them getting out of this schedule. The schedule they have, where is it? I have it here. It's going to put them in a really difficult situation.
At Colorado,
Yep.
at Notre Dame,
Yep.
at Utah comes to them,
Yep.
Washington comes to them, and at Oregon.
Right.
Yeah, they're in trouble. Yeah.
It's all the back end of your schedule. I mean, you're talking September 30th, Colorado, like you said. 2 weeks later, it's at Notre Dame. 1 week later, Utah home. 1 week later, at Cal, which is okay. That's a playoff. I mean, that's a patsy.
Yeah.
But then you go to Washington. You have Washington, then at Oregon. To your point, this schedule, they're not the greatest teams in the world, but it's a gauntlet of you got to keep your level of game high enough to not lose. And the problem is none of those teams are great teams, but every one of those teams can beat you.
And you're right. You're right in the injury time of your year. If you
Guys,
notice,
let me ask you something, because it doesn't even make sense to me. You're talking about this guy. He's a offensive genius.
he really is. Lincoln Riley is. Yeah, but
Doesn't it occur to someone that they need a defense? I don't give a shit how good your offense is. When they recruit these kids, don't they try to put together a defensive team? Well, it's just like Coryell when he was. What the hell is what is?
No,
tell me
Rick,
the mindset.
No, Rick, you ask a great question, but understand a concept. The players are all talented. Listen, they're all 4- and 5-star players on the USC's defense. It's not a lack of talent. It's whether the talent matches the coach's philosophy and whether they're executing it in a way that is successful against the game plans that they're facing. And so in the Pac-10, Pac-12, Pac-46, soon to be Pac-6, you have a lot of aggressive offenses. So you're going to be playing a lot more nickel. Okay, if you're playing a lot more nickel, that means, and this is just historically, USC would come east and play some traditional, maybe a Big Ten team that runs a lot, puts a couple tight ends in the goes with a they don't go with a 1-1, 11 with a 1 tight end, 1 running back. They go with 21, 2 tight ends and a running back, right? So the philosophy changes. Then you're changing your personnel on the field. My point being, just like on offense, there's an amazing level of coaching that is required to get a successful program scoring points. It requires great coaching to stop points from being scored. And you got to pick the right coach. And so that's the administrative side of being a head coach. And while Lincoln Riley has shown the ability to be a great offensive head coach, he's not shown yet the ability to be a great head coach, which means he's managing both sides of the ball as that CEO. And so, to give you an example, what did Day do after and 2 years ago, at the end of the season 2 years ago, he says, guess what? Yeah. My defense is not living up to my offensive genius, and I've got to be the CEO, so I'm going to fire my good defensive coordinator who's been here for a while and has done a very good job, and we've held teams down. So he goes out and gets the best. Watching the playoffs that year and the bowl season, he said, what defensive coordinator impressed me most? And he went out and got him from Oklahoma State. And so he brings him in, and that's the CEO. And so there's levels of this. You're a head coach, and you're a good recruiter. Are you a good X and O's head coach? Are you a good administrator? Are you a good CEO? And that's why I'm just going to say this flat out. What makes Saban so good is he's good at multiple tasks. He can be both the guiding principle of his defense. He can be the guiding principle of his recruiting, and he can be the CEO of his program at the same time. That's success. Coach Day at Ohio State has to learn how to be that CEO. We haven't seen it yet. Maybe he will be. And again, that goes with every coach. Are you able to manage all facets that are required for a head coach? And this is why the Pac-10 has had problems. They just haven't been able to keep great defensive coordinators in conference.
I don't know, Tom. Something doesn't seem right to me. I just, and I see that in all sports. This is like baseball. Anyway, look, I'm not going to belabor this because we're over our time. You know me. I mean, I can rant about anything. So what number are we at? We're on
5. If you want to do a 2-part and come back with the top 5, that's up to you. But because
let's do that. Let's do the top 5. Let's do the top 5. Okay, Rick.
Oh, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, we got the top 5. You may as well.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my beloved Ohio State Buckeyes are at 5. Bottom line is this. I see them as a 3, possibly 4-loss team this year because they are lost on the offensive line. And they don't have anybody they have the best wide receiver in the game, possibly best player in the game, period, with Marvin Harrison Jr. That guy was legit at 18 years old. He would have been a top pick last year as a freshman. I mean, the kid's ridiculous, but then again, he came out of the womb that way. His dad was pretty damn good. So, I mean, sometimes it's just you look at a dog and you go, yeah, he's going to have great pups. Did he come from him? Yes. He's the best wide receiver in the game. I mean, it's just bottom line.
Why would they rank him number 5? If why would these?
They dropped him. They literally dropped them 2 spots. I'm sorry. They were 3. Yes. And they looked so anemic against Indiana Saturday. Like they were in danger of losing that game at one point. It was 10-3 at halftime.
Yep.
And you're a 28, 30-point favorite in this game.
So why number 5? Why would they rank them number 5?
Because they're basing on their skilled positions, but what they forgot is they don't have a quarterback. Their offensive line, like I said, nobody, like me and Tom were talking about earlier about centers that never are heard of. Well, now you're going to start hearing about their offensive line because they're bad. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now you're not hearing about, hey, we got Trayvon Williams in the backfield and we've got Marvin Harrison Jr., who, by the way, only touched the ball 3 times in that game. Mm-hmm. When you don't have skill, when you don't have time or a way to run the ball to set up throws, these 2 quarterbacks are going to have troubles this year. And I promise you by about midseason, they're going to have a quarterback controversy in Columbus because they're going to be crying for the other one. The other one's it's going to be ugly. Just my opinion. Yeah. And I'm not saying I want that because honestly, to me, I don't want that. I want undefeated at the end of the year every year for me personally.
You think name recognition has anything to do? Why the hell would they be ranked number 5?
Because of what they did last year. They were still in the playoffs last year. I mean, you can't. I mean, you dropped TCU because of how much they lost. I'm surprised they didn't with Ohio State, but they didn't lose a lot. That's the thing. They lost their quarterback and some offensive linemen. Well, experts and newspaper writers are idiots too. So they don't give a shit about the offensive line. They don't even know who they lost on the offensive line. They don't care. Yeah. So you're right. It is name recognition. Okay. So Ohio State to me, and I'll tell you right now, here's who I think they lose to. Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, for sure, those 3. And I think when they go into Camp Randall and that Luke Fickell revenge game comes, it's going to get ugly. And I think they lose 4 games this year. I really do.
Wow.
And they may be out if that happens. And that's a shame because next year with the 12-team playoff, there's no reason to fire him right now because he can lose to Michigan next year and still make the playoffs. It wouldn't matter.
And to your point, and as a Notre Dame fan, that's the scariest of all worlds to me because that means Freeman will go to Ohio State. And I love Coach Freeman.
Marcus is a good dude.
Coach Freeman. Yep. But I digress. But I totally agree with your assessment. Totally agree with your assessment.
Florida State, number 4, probably the biggest win to me. I mean, they just smacked them. They just smacked them. And again, we're talking about quarterbacks. They have one hell of a quarterback there too. The top 10 minus 2 teams, who Tom's right, and the 2 teams we're talking about that don't have quarterbacks that we know of, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? When's the last time you could say that? We don't know their quarterback situation. Right. That's insane. Wow. And yet all 3 of them are still top 5. Or
that's got to be name recognition, right?
It is. Right? And defenses. I think defenses. Yeah. I mean, some of these defenses are ridiculous. Anyways, Florida State, another good sleeper for a national title. I mean, that test was passed with flying colors. You got to look, and I always get scared looking at their schedule and saying, oh, there's no real ranked opponents. I would bet you by the time they play Pitt will probably be ranked. By the time they play maybe not Wake, but just remember the ACC's weak and they're on the weak side of it. I mean, they don't have anybody. I mean, that's what sucks for them. It's both good and bad. I say it's the double-edged sword, which it really is.
That's to your point. I've said, and last Monday night or Sunday night was the pre-playoff game. And the reality was one of those teams was going to emerge as a potential playoff team, and it is Florida State. They have a quarterback. They have a head coach. Norvell's a very underrated coach. They had a great recruiting class. They've got great speed on that team. The defense is lively, but the schedule is incredibly favorable. But I'm going to add one more piece to this. You mentioned it, and I will tell you, you and I are agreeing here. I don't think there should be a coaches or AP poll until the first week of October. Every team should have 4 games in the can before you rate them, because number one, this is not pro football where you bring the roster from last year into this year. You have attrition, and now we have transfers. So whatever the team is, and to your point, Ralph, is that 3 of these teams don't have top-notch quarterbacks yet. Right. No, after 4 weeks, they may have developed into, because we have great coaching on these teams. That was one of the differentiating marks of these 4 teams. The 3 teams we're talking about, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, they have great coaching. But I've been a long proponent that we stupidly rate the preseason top 25 based on last year's results as opposed to what's coming back. That's why Steele is so good at what he does in his betting book, as he looks at what production is coming back, and that's how I'm going to determine is. But that's even inefficient because it doesn't take into account injuries. And significant injury makes it a top 5 team, maybe a top 15 team. And the reality is, wait 4 weeks, wait until October 1st before you rate teams and schedule or catalog where they should be in the top 25. That's been my thesis for a long time. I wish it were the case, but too many people sell too many preseason magazines and junk before the season.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I agree with you. I think that'd probably be the thing to do. But then there's too much money involved, and they keep the fans interested in the arguments, and all that kind of. Oh, yeah. And that's all they give a shit about. They don't give They don't give a crap about any.
They don't care about the truth.
That's right.
Right.
The truth.
Yeah. The truth. And you're absolutely right. The truth is that until these teams play 4 or 5 games,
we don't have no idea what you have.
Nobody
knows. No idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Good God Almighty. All right. So that's Florida State, number 3.
Number 3 is Alabama. Good old Alabama. Well, we'll know a lot more about them, like Tom said, this Saturday when Hook 'em Horns comes flying on in. Personally, I don't think Alabama gets out of the SEC. I don't think it's a team we're going to talk about. I do think that I agree with Tom. Honestly, I like Tennessee if those two ever met, and they do actually on the 21st of October. Then Alabama has to go into A&M, and if anybody remembers the last time they went to A&M, a little last-second field goal.
Yep.
I mean, the SEC on this side is where it's at. But I just don't see Alabama being that Alabama this year. Too many question marks offensively to me. Again, we can't name a quarterback that's going to be worth anything for them. And Tennessee's explosive, as me and Tom were saying. I want to see, again, I want to see what's going to happen Saturday. I think and here's the bad part about Alabama, because name carries so much weight. Mm-hmm. If they lose this game to Texas, they may move 2 spots, maybe 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's absolute horseshit, because if it's Michigan back in the day, we dropped 7 or 8 spots, and it does mean a lot. It means you are on the outside looking in, and you need a lot of things to happen in front of you. Alabama, they just need 1 or 2 things to happen, and that's what the BS is. And it doesn't matter if they lose by 20 in this game; it won't matter.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the politics of this whole. This is what pisses me off about
that. Why you should not have ratings until a week.
You're absolutely right.
Week 4.
Yes,
I agree.
And just like we were saying, I mean, it does mean a lot when you rank them this high this early, because they don't fall that much. If you're in 17th, let's say a BYU or a Boise back in the day, understand that their strength of schedule, but they have no way of getting in. Even if they go 13-0, they're not getting in.
That's right.
Alabama could have 2 losses and they're still going to be ranked above them. That's ridiculous. It's got to change. That's why I'm glad the 12-team playoff is coming. I actually am a proponent for that.
I agree.
Number 2, Michigan, I mean, I can say a ton about this team. Let me just tell you, JJ's the real deal. Their backfield is probably their two-headed monster in the backfield.
Amazing.
Is probably the best backfield in the nation as a combination. This tight end, number 18, please keep a watch on him. A lot of people don't talk about him. This kid is legit, probably the best wide receiving tight end we've ever had, and that's saying a ton. He's built more like a wide receiver, tall, lanky, and can run. Loveland. Defensively, we had a lot of question marks. Let me tell you something. The front seven is probably just as good as last year, maybe better. And we did a hell of a job in the transfer portal. Michigan was number one recruited out of number one ranked in the transfer portal this year. They got tackle and a center out of Stanford. They got a starting corner out of UMass. We're loaded. This is Jim's time. If he doesn't win it this year, I don't have a lot of faith going forward as far as not in him, just that we're going to get over that hump because
and the schedule.
We had kids. And our schedule's fantastic, except for Penn State. That's the part that scares me. But when you have 80% of a team come back that could all be making checks right now, that tells me a lot of that's a family, dude. That's people wanting to come back for a goal. And that all starts with Blake Corum. That kid is a winner. He's just a straight out winner.
Blake Corum is a special young man. Rick, just add two pieces to what you just said there. Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Clemson. I think over the last 5 years, the only teams that have put more players into the NFL than Michigan. They're number 5. And this team is loaded. Team speed is phenomenal. The size of the defense and offense, the offensive line, I think
offensive line's
about
again top 3, maybe top 2 again this year. Yeah,
just monster. Yep. And the schedule's favorable, so it's a great team. It's Harbaugh. This should be the one that secures his future.
Guys, let me ask you something.
Go ahead. Yep.
If they have a weak schedule, doesn't that play against them in the long run from a mental standpoint?
No.
Because all you've got
to do is get into the top 4, right? And schedule strength has nothing to do with the coaches poll or AP poll to get you in that top 4. It's a debating point. But it's
about their mentality.
Mentally for themselves.
Mentally for themselves. They not breeze, but they just go through this. Nobody really challenges them. And all of a sudden they're in the top 4, and now they're facing the big guns. I don't know. Do you think
I can see your side of it, Ralph? It's like basketball. They weren't tested coming in, kind of stuff like that.
And then it goes to their head. It's like,
I think these kids, I think these kids and the coaches and the media in particular, puffs up your ego so much that you believe your headlines. So let's say your defense has averaged 7, 8 points a game over the course of the season. You go into the playoffs and you're told that you are a great defense. Yeah. This is the power of positive thinking, right? You are what you believe you are, right? And so all it has to be is one game, and you put up those things. Then it's the coach's X's and O's that helps put you in the right position so that your confidence shows through and is successful. Now, if a team doesn't have the talent, that's the difference.
Yeah, that's different.
If you don't have talent to match that weak schedule, meaning if that weak schedule is balanced with lack of talent, then it will show up. But if you've got the talent, what you're going to avoid is probably injuries, which is going to help you in the long run anyway. And so
yes.
I don't think we like to think that it would depreciate the value of a team at the end of the season, but it never does.
Yeah.
Point taken.
Speaking of weak schedules, we go to number 1 Georgia.
There we go.
This team, I mean, it's pathetic. Seriously, I just looked back through their schedule and I'm like, they have 2 games on this schedule that are worth anything.
That's right.
And it's Ole Miss at home and at Tennessee is their whole season right there.
The whole season.
That's their whole season. How pathetic is that, Ralph? That's why they shouldn't be ranked number 1. He's right. I mean, why? If strength of schedule mattered, they'd get jumped in the seedings before the Final Four. But as I know for a fact, because somehow Michigan didn't get that little jump up with Cincinnati that year, and they wanted to make sure that two SEC teams weren't playing each other in round one, because that's all that was, by the way. That was as politics as it came.
Yep.
So they could guarantee that one were in the finals. It was ridiculous.
Yep.
But anyways, Georgia at number one, if you look at their strength of schedule, like if we were doing the NCAA basketball show, it'd probably be like 120 at strength of schedule. It's pathetic. I mean, it's Tennessee, and that's not until late in the season. You better hope Tennessee is what we think they are. Because if they're not, Ole Miss is going to slide out. They may have one ranked team on this schedule.
Yeah, that's why I've never been a proponent of the way the schedules and these AP standings and all that crap. Somehow they got to change. They have to change that. It just doesn't make sense.
Next year again, it'll be fine. That'll work itself out, because if you're number 5, you have a gripe, right? I mean, if you're number 5 this year and you're going, hey, look at our strength of schedule and we only have one loss, they have one loss. Next year, if you're number 13 and you have 2 losses and you're bitching, sorry.
And then the following year, we're going to have super conferences, which is going to change it all.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I've always thought they should give you points for a victory, depending on your opponents. In other words, you see what I'm saying? You get so many points if you beat a
it kind of is what they're doing in basketball. Tier 1 wins, Tier
Ralph,
2 wins. Yeah.
You may remember, Rick, I'm sure you do remember the Sagarin rating system? That
the Sagarins,
yeah, Sagarin,
yep.
yeah. They specifically factored in strength of schedule as a multiplier to your other components to rate the programs, and I always held that to be the holy grail of proper ranking, and because it took strength of schedule into consideration.
Yep, he's absolutely correct. And then they got mad that it was all robotic and computerized. They wanted human element, and I said, why? I said, everything we touch turns to shit. Why would you do that?
Exactly. because they want to be able to massage the outcome.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
SEC money, baby.
It's money. See what I'm saying?
ESPN, baby. ESPN.
ESPN, baby.
Dying.
Oh, good God, I can't wait till they put a stake through their hearts.
Go woke and go broke.
I'm in the middle of their little Disney fight with my cable network. I don't have ESPNs right now. This is horse shit.
Me either.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's just add it here.
Yep.
We'll do a quick show in a few days, and we'll do a shorter show just on the playoffs and the championship.
Just on the playoffs. Yep.
Yeah, let's do like 4 or 5 games into the season, like you said.
Let's do that.
And see what kind of changes
and
we
revisit.
see.
Yeah. And see where we're at, and see who we like in the playoffs after like 4 games. Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, folks, listen, you've been listening to Sports, Music, and Life. This is the sports section, and it's all sponsored and brought to you by You and the Truth. Because the truth is that, and this is my take on this, the truth is that this is out of control. The college, the college system, not only the educational system, which is totally in shambles, now it's taken over the sports. When you talk to me about this NIL, which is something I want you to, and maybe in the next episode, to really get into, college, to me, it's over. I mean, to me, it's disgusting. It really is. And, I feel bad for some of these kids. It's just horrible. It's horrible. So here's another great American institution that, to me, the stake is right there at the heart. All it takes is one hammer and it's dead. The NIL, I believe, is a stake through the heart. I don't know if you guys agree. We'll talk about that in a later episode. Folks, hit the like and subscribe buttons and all that good stuff, and we will see you next time. Rick, Tom, as always, you guys are fantastic. Catch you on the next. Take care. Bye.
On behalf of everyone from Life, Sports, Music, and Beer, we thank you for tuning in. If you've got that story to tell, comment below. Smash that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell so you can hear other amazing stories.